The planet he had crash-landed on was nothing like Earth. This could not really be happening, he thought to himself. Dense, towering trees with silver leaves and thick, dark trunks stretched into the sky, casting shadows that twisted under the faint light of two pale moons. Commander Lucas Grant hadn't meant to end up here. His mission was routine reconnaissance, but something had gone horribly wrong, and now he was alone, and his ship a smoldering wreck a mile behind him. What was happening? He couldn't believe this. As he moved cautiously through the forest, a low hum began to rise around him. At first, he thought it was his imagination, some effect of the strange atmosphere. But the sound grew louder, filling his mind, almost pulling him forward. Before he could react, a shadow moved at the edge of his vision, and then another. Figures in sleek, metallic armor stepped into his path, their movements fluid and fast, alien weapons glinting under the moonlight. Lucas took a step back, his hand reaching instinctively for his sidearm, but a sharp, melodic voice cut through the darkness. "Don't struggle. Human," the voice said, a faint lilt in the tone that sent a chill down his spine. The figures moved aside, and she appeared, a tall, elegant woman with skin the color of deep amethyst, eyes like molten silver, and a crown of woven light on her head. She wore robes of black and silver, flowing and intricate, and though her presence was regal and powerful, there was an undeniable warmth to her gaze as she looked at him, her eyes moving over him with interest. "Who are you?" he asked, forcing his voice to remain steady. "I am Nira, Queen of the Valtari," she replied, her voice soft yet commanding. "And you, human, are trespassing in a place forbidden to outsiders." Lucas met her gaze, feeling an unexpected pull, a strange connection that seemed to transcend words. "My landing was an accident. I didn't mean to invade," he said, trying to hold on to his composure under her piercing gaze. Her lips curved into a faint smile, a gesture both amused and curious. "An accident? Perhaps. Yet you are here, and fate has brought you to me at a time of great need." She turned to her guards, who stepped back into the shadows, leaving the two of them alone in the clearing. The Queen's gaze softened, and she took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. He could see the intricate markings on her skin, symbols of her rank and heritage, and the way her robes moved, catching the faint light as she walked. "Our world faces a threat," she said, her voice lowering, "one that I cannot face alone." Lucas frowned, unsure of what to make of her words. "And how exactly can I help?" She paused, studying him with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "The Valtari bond only with those who share our energy, our essence. But no one of my people can withstand the ritual we must undertake to protect our world. The prophecy speaks of an outsider, one with the courage and strength to endure." He swallowed, trying to make sense of it all. "So you're saying I'm supposed to bond with you? What exactly does that mean?" Her eyes held his, and he could feel the depth of her need, the vulnerability behind her regal exterior. "The bond is intimate, human, more than mere alliance or agreement. It is a merging of spirit, a ritual that requires trust and closeness." He couldn't hide his surprise, and she smiled, a hint of amusement in her expression. "If you're unwilling, I understand. The ritual is not to be taken lightly." Lucas took a breath, feeling the weight of her words, the enormity of what she was asking. There was danger in her request, but also something he couldn't quite put into words, an unspoken connection, a pull that defied reason. He could feel the bond she described, even though it remained unexplained. "What happens if I refuse?" he asked, his voice quiet. She looked away, her expression clouded. "Then my people may fall, and you will be free to leave. Though this place, this bond, may haunt you." He hesitated, looking into her eyes, searching for answers he wasn't sure he was ready to understand. But something in her gaze held him, a silent promise that stirred something deep within him. "I'll help you," he said, the words leaving his mouth before he'd fully processed them. She inclined her head, a gesture of gratitude that felt ancient, sacred. "Then we are bound, Lucas of Earth. Our fates entwined until the ritual is complete." She extended her hand, and as he took it, he felt a warmth radiate from her touch, a quiet yet undeniable connection. In that moment, he knew his life would never be the same, and he wasn't sure he wanted it to be. The Queen's palace was unlike anything Lucas had seen before. Tall pillars carved from shimmering crystal reached toward the vaulted ceiling, and the walls were lined with strange symbols that seemed to pulse with an energy of their own. A soft glow filled the chamber, casting intricate shadows that danced with the shifting light. Queen Nera led him through winding hallways, her movements graceful and silent, her presence commanding. Her guards watched them from a distance, their expressions a mixture of reverence and concern. Lucas sensed the weight of their gaze, the unspoken expectations they held for him, a stranger from another world, bound to their queen in a way he barely understood. They reached a small chamber bathed in pale light, and she gestured for him to enter. Inside, a large, circular pool of water shimmered, its surface reflecting the starlight that filtered in through a small, round window above. Runes were etched into the floor around the pool, their shapes foreign yet oddly familiar, as though they held secrets buried deep within his mind. Queen Nera turned to face him, her gaze intense. "This is the place where the bond must be formed," she said, her voice quiet yet filled with a gravity that made him shiver. "Once we begin, there is no turning back. The ritual will bind us together, but it will test us both." Lucas swallowed, feeling a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. He hadn't fully understood what he'd agreed to, but he couldn't deny the strange pull he felt toward her, the connection that seemed to grow stronger with every moment. "And what exactly does this ritual involve?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nera stepped closer, her eyes meeting his. "The bond is one of energy, spirit, and intent," she explained. "You will be connected to me, sharing in my power, my thoughts, my memories, but it will cost you as well. The bond requires strength, and it will draw from you in ways you may not be prepared for." He took a breath, steadying himself. "So this connection, it's more than just physical." She nodded, a hint of sadness in her expression. "Yes, it goes beyond what you know as intimacy. You will see my world through my eyes, feel the weight of my responsibilities, the struggles I face as queen, and I will feel your world, your past, your fears." Lucas felt a pang of vulnerability at the thought, knowing that he would be baring his very soul to her, allowing her to glimpse the parts of him he kept hidden even from himself. But there was no turning back now. He had made his choice, and he knew, somehow, that he belonged here, that this bond was part of something far greater than himself. He took a step forward, meeting her gaze. "Then I'm ready." Nera's expression softened, and she extended her hand, guiding him to the edge of the pool. They knelt side by side, their reflections merging in the water's surface, a perfect image of two worlds intertwined. She raised her hands, and a faint light began to emanate from her skin, casting a gentle glow that filled the chamber. "The ritual begins with trust," she murmured, her voice a soft melody that echoed through the chamber. "Place your hand in mine, and let your mind open." Lucas did as she instructed, feeling the warmth of her skin beneath his fingers. A rush of energy surged through him, a wave of sensation that left him breathless. Images flooded his mind, flashes of alien landscapes, towering structures made of light and shadow, memories of a life filled with responsibilities and burdens he could barely comprehend. He saw her world as she saw it, the beauty and the hardships, the weight of the crown she bore, the faces of her people looking to her for hope, for guidance. He felt her strength, her resilience, but also the loneliness that lingered behind her regal facade, the longing for a connection that transcended the demands of her role. And then, he felt her emotions, raw and unfiltered, flowing into him like a river of light. There was a depth to her he hadn't expected, a compassion, a vulnerability that lay hidden beneath her composed exterior. He felt her heart, her hopes, her fears, all laid bare before him. But as their connection deepened, Lucas realized that his own memories were slipping into her mind. He felt the touch of her consciousness moving through his past, seeing the life he had left behind, the people he cared about, the regrets he carried. He felt exposed, vulnerable, yet strangely comforted, knowing that she was there, sharing in his experience, understanding him in a way no one else ever had. Their bond grew stronger, a silent connection that pulsed with life, with energy, filling the chamber with a warmth that seemed to echo through the very walls. The pool began to glow, its surface shimmering as their energies merged. a perfect harmony of two spirits intertwined. But as the ritual reached its peak, a sudden jolt of pain shot through him, breaking the connection. He gasped, clutching his chest, feeling a strange weight settle over him. Nira's expression turned grave, her gaze filled with concern. "The bond is incomplete," she whispered, her voice trembling. Something is wrong." Lucas looked at her, confusion clouding his mind. "What do you mean?" "I thought we had—" She shook her head, her eyes dark with worry. "The ritual requires full surrender, but there is something blocking it. Something within you, or perhaps within me." He felt a chill run down his spine, realizing that their connection, though powerful, was flawed. The bond had brought them closer, but something had fractured within the ritual, a barrier that neither of them could fully see, yet both could feel. "We must find the source," she said, her voice firm yet filled with a quiet fear. "If we do not complete the bond, it may have unintended consequences." Lucas felt the weight of her words, the urgency of their situation. The ritual was more than just a connection. It was a pact, a promise, and if they failed to fulfill it, the consequences could be devastating, not just for them, but for her entire world. As they rose from the pool, Lucas looked at Nira, seeing the vulnerability in her gaze, the uncertainty that mirrored his own. They were bound together now, their fates entwined. And whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. And as they left the chamber, the faint glow of their bond lingered in the air, a reminder of the power they shared and the path that awaited them, a path that would demand everything they had, and perhaps more than they were willing to give. The night was thick with anticipation as Nira led Lucas through a dimly lit corridor deep within her palace. Their footsteps echoed softly off the walls, and an air of tension surrounded them, weighing heavily on their hearts. The incomplete bond pulsed between them like an open wound, a constant reminder of their failed ritual and the growing danger it posed. Nira's face was set in determination, but her silver eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. Lucas sensed her worry, a quiet vulnerability that tugged at his own sense of purpose. He had come this far, feeling a bond to her he could hardly explain, yet he understood now that he was part of something far greater than himself. "The ritual room holds an ancient wellspring," she explained as they descended a flight of stairs carved into the rock. "It is said to amplify the bond, to draw out the true essence of each soul. If there is a chance to complete our connection, it will be there." Lucas nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He wasn't just here to fulfill a promise or a duty. He was bound to her now, in ways he could not fully understand. Each step toward the ritual room filled him with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. They entered the wellspring chamber, an expansive hall carved from gleaming stone. In the center lay a circular pool, its surface shimmering with faint light that seemed to ripple with unseen energy. Strange symbols were etched into the floor around it, and the air was thick with a quiet, almost holy silence. Nira stepped toward the pool, gesturing for him to follow. "Once we begin, we cannot stop. The bond will either complete or consume us." The gravity of her words struck him, but he steeled himself, taking a breath as he stepped closer. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Nira's gaze softened, and she extended her hand, guiding him to stand beside her at the edge of the pool. They clasped hands, their fingers entwined, and as their connection deepened, Lucas felt a warmth spread through him, an energy both comforting and intense. She began to chant in her native tongue, her voice low and melodic, echoing off the chamber walls. The symbols on the floor began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with her words. Lucas felt her energy surround him, merging with his own, drawing him into the depths of her soul. The world around him faded, and he found himself in a place beyond time, beyond space. Images flashed before him, moments of her life, her battles, her joys, her sorrows. He felt the weight of her responsibilities, the sacrifices she had made for her people, the loneliness that had haunted her for years. But as he embraced her memories, he felt his own past rise to the surface, intertwining with hers. His memories blended with hers, revealing parts of himself he had long buried, the dreams, the fears, the moments that had shaped him. And in that shared space, he felt a closeness to her that transcended words, a connection born of both understanding and vulnerability. As their bond deepened, a sudden jolt of pain shot through him, sharp and blinding. He gasped, feeling a darkness press against him, pushing back against the light of their connection. Nira's grip tightened, and he saw the struggle in her eyes. Something is resisting, she murmured, her voice filled with urgency. It's as if there is a force within you, within both of us, holding us apart. The pain intensified, and he felt the darkness surge, threatening to shatter their bond, to consume them both. Desperation gripped him, and he looked into her eyes, searching for strength, for answers. "What do we do?" he whispered, his voice strained. She met his gaze, her expression resolute. "We must embrace fully. Lucas, we must become one in mind and spirit, completely." He understood what she meant, and without hesitation, he pulled her closer, their foreheads touching as they closed their eyes, surrendering to the bond. He let go of all resistance, all fear, opening himself fully to her, allowing their energies to merge without barriers. In that moment, he felt her soul, her essence, wrap around him, enveloping him in warmth, in light. The darkness receded, replaced by a profound sense of peace, of unity. He could feel her heart, her thoughts, her spirit, as if they were his own. Their connection was complete, a perfect harmony that resonated through the chamber, filling the air with a radiant glow. The wellspring pulsed, and the light within them grew, expanding outward until it filled the entire chamber, bathing them in a brilliance that seemed to transcend the physical world. And then, as the light began to fade, they found themselves standing at the edge of the pool, still holding hands, their gazes locked in a shared understanding. "It is done," Nira whispered, her voice filled with wonder. Lucas felt a sense of calm, of completeness he had never known. He was no longer just Lucas, and she was no longer just Nira. They were bound in ways that went beyond words, beyond titles, beyond any simple understanding of self. The chamber fell silent, and they stood together, bathed in the aftermath of their bond. As they left the wellspring, the realization settled over them that their lives had been forever changed. They were bound not just by a promise, but by a shared purpose, a connection that went deeper than any ritual or tradition. As they emerged from the palace, the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, casting a warm light over the alien landscape. Lucas felt a new strength within him, a sense of belonging he had never known. He looked at Nira, seeing both the queen and the woman she had hidden beneath her crown. And as they stood together, hand in hand, Lucas knew that their journey was only beginning, a journey that would lead them across worlds, bound by a love and purpose that defied the boundaries of their past lives.